Every time a coup happens, the statement comes fast. Unconstitutional change of government are unacceptable. Zero tolerance, return to civilian rule, etc. But then comes the real question. If the African Union is the continent's top political body, why do coups still happen? Why do leaders keep bending constitutions? Why do flawed elections repeat? Because the African Union has rules, it has charters, and it has declarations. And yet, again and again, democracy slips and enforcement looks optional. So today, we ask the uncomfortable question: why does the African Union struggle to enforce democracy? Welcome to the channel where Africa's stories take center stage. From politics to business to culture and the untold narratives shaping the continent. If it matters to Africa, we discuss it. My name is always KB Japan, and I welcome you to yet another episode. Let's dive in. The African Union is the continental umbrella. 55 member states headquartered in Addis Ababa. It's designed to coordinate Africa's collective political and economic agenda. But here's the first reality check. The AU is not a United States of Africa. It's not a federal government. It's an intergovernmental institution, meaning its powers ultimately comes from its member state and it's limited by them. So when we ask, why can't the EU enforce democracy? We are really asking, why can't African states force other African states to behave democratically when they all guard their sovereignty? And to answer that, we need the rulebook. The African Union has strong norms on paper for coups and unconstitutional takeovers. The AU's Constitutive Act includes a clear principle: government that comes to power through unconstitutional means should be suspended from participating in AU activities. The AU also has a continent-wide democratic framework, the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, often called the ACDEG, setting standards for elections, constitutional order and governance. And the AU has repeatedly reaffirmed zero tolerance through political instruments like the Lomé Declaration Framework and later declarations on unconstitutional changes of government. So why doesn't this translate into consistent enforcement? The AU is a union of government, so enforcement depends on governments agreeing to punish other governments. That creates a built-in tension. Africa's older continental body, the OAU, was famous for non-interference, a stance shaped by the colonial experience and fear of external meddling. Many analysts describe the AU as evolving towards non-indifference, but with enforcement still constrained by politics and sovereignty instincts. The AU can say democracy matters, but when enforcement requires heads of states to isolate one of their peers, political calculations rush in. If we sanction them today, can we be sanctioned tomorrow? Would this set a precedent on term limits? Would this destabilize a fragile state and spill over borders? These are the questions they ask themselves. So the AU often becomes a place where values collide with real politics. And this is why AU responses can look inconsistent. The rules may be strong, but the political will varies case by case. One of the reasons is the politics of peer enforcement. The AU's tools are often blunt and sometimes ambiguous. Yes, Article 30 allows suspension of unconstitutional government from the African Union's activities, but the suspension is not the same as removal. It doesn't automatically restore democracy, and enforcement gets even harder because not all democratic backslidings looks like a coup. The coup problem is easier than the constitution problem. A coup is obvious, soldiers take power. A constitutional coup is trickier. Leaders change the rules, rewrite term limits, weaken courts, capture electoral commissions, then claim legality of the country. The AU itself has recognized gaps and the need to refine responses to unconstitutional changes of government, including manipulation of constitutions. An AU-affiliated policy work notes term limits amendment as a recurring challenge in recent years. Exactly the kind of democratic erosion that doesn't always trigger clean AU enforcement pathways. Reuters coverage of Togo's constitutional changes, described by opposition as a constitutional coup shows how messy this category can be. Technically, legally, domestically, but democratically corrosive. The treaty problem, not everyone signs up. Even the EU's flagship democratic charter, ACDEG, doesn't bind every member state equally because ratification varies. The AU's ratification list shows multiple countries still not ratified or fully committed as of the AU's July 2024 status list. So the AU is trying to enforce standards that are not uniformly adopted while dealing with democratic erosion that often hides behind legality. Enforcing democracy costs money, logistics, monitoring capacity, and sustained presence. The AU has tried to strengthen financial independence like the 0.2% levy on eligible imports, adopted in 2016 as part of the AU financing reforms. But the AU still struggles with financing gaps and uneven implementation, meaning major programs often rely heavily on partners. One analysis of the AU's 2024 budget notes heavy reliance on EU-European support, describing EU and European member states as providing a large share of the overall AU budget in that year. One will ask, what does money have to do with democracy enforcement? A lot, because to enforce democratic standards, the AU needs credible election observation and follow-up. They also need long-term governance monitoring, not just election weeks. They need mediation capacity with leverage and, when necessary, peace and security tools. The AU does deploy election observation missions, preliminary statement, assessing alignment with AU principles. But the observation alone is not enforcement, especially when follow-through is politically contested. So no money, no leverage. No leverage, no enforcement. It's as simple as that. So now we end with a question that changes how you see the entire continent's political architecture. If the AU struggles to enforce democracy at the continental level, why do regional blocs sometimes look more effective? Why does ECOWAS at times move faster? Why do sub-regional institutions sometimes have sharper leverages? Let's hear your thoughts in the comment section. If you're new here on the channel, kindly do well to subscribe and to tap the bell notification icon to receive instant notification for when the next episode is uploaded. Thank you so much for joining me, and see you on the next one.